Alright guys, hope you're doing well. My name is Rowlands and I'm a nutritional balancing practitioner, and in this video I just want to give my opinion about what's going off in the world at the moment. So the first thing I want to do is sort of like pan out a little bit and see things from a bigger perspective. At the root we are spiritual beings, and we live on a spiritual earth, in a spiritual universe. And the whole idea of, the natural evolution that the Creator wants, in my opinion, is about love and unity and family and coming together and developing and eating well, all that sort of stuff. And at the moment the world's a mess. Similar to my last video with what the real pandemic is. People are ill, people are toxic, people are fighting each other, people are being violent, and people are getting played like puppets on a string. It's just unbelievable what's happening at the moment. So if we're coming from this perspective of the universe is alive, we live in a spiritual universe, then it's not difficult to reach the conclusion that we are living completely wrong at the moment. We don't look after our health, which is a big thing in being a spiritual individual. Like, to evolve spiritually, we need to be highly nourished. We need to be free of pollution and toxicity. That's not promoted in the world today. What's promoted is junk food. What's promoted is fizzy pops, alcohol, cigarettes. Another important thing is the family unit. The nuclear family, and appreciating the dynamics of male and female, which is in everything. Does society teach that? Nah. Everything's getting mixed together. The family unit's breaking down. Communities are breaking down. More and more people are being born into single parent households. So that's the opposite of a spiritual world. Do we love each other as one race? And yes, we should appreciate each races, but do we love each other as one race? No. There's more divide at the moment, which I'll get onto. There's more violence. There's more chaos. So then we can reach the conclusion of, well, we must be controlled. There must be something else at play. Because if we live in a spiritual universe that's benevolent and that wants us to be loving and kind and to help each other, then why do we get taught bullshit? Why do we get taught to eat bullshit? Why is sort of single parenthood sort of like, in a sense, people are happy about it? Yeah, you'll be fine, you don't need that guy, you don't need a father in the household, power to you. And why do we not, everyone's saying about loving the differences between the races and embracing each culture. Why do we not embrace male and female? Why do we not embrace the masculine energy, the feminine energy? Why do we want to merge them together? Why do we want to say men and women are equal when energetically they're not? They're complementary. Why is that? Because it breaks down society. It causes fear. It causes low vibration. It causes us not to develop and not to transcend. So then we can understand that the world is run by entities, rogues, the devil, individuals that at one level understand this and don't want the human race to thrive. Now, a lot of people these days are thinking that we're coming together. We're not. It's creating more divide. Let's go back 4 months to the start of the coronavirus. Anyone that has any decent knowledge about health realizes that a virus that's similar to the flu is not harmful. To put the world into lockdown, to put millions and millions of people into unemployment, to put millions of people to the edge of poverty, to absolutely wipe out some people's livelihoods, to stop cancer patients getting seen, to stop surgeries. Thousands and thousands of people are dying from this for something that affects 0.0003, or it might be 0.003 of the world population. And the people that are dying of corona are obese, they've got heart conditions, they've got diabetes, they're not well, or they're really old and frail. You know, my grandma unfortunately passed away in January. She was in a really, really bad position, and literally whatever she would have caught next would have killed her. If corona would have killed her, would it have affected me too much? I don't think it would. That's part of life. People die. My grandma lived a good life, and unfortunately she smoked all her life, and it really, really affected her later on in life. And she caught pneumonia, which happens when you've got a terrible immune system because of usually lifestyle and other things. And she ended up getting septicemia and she died. She caught a virus. She caught a pneumonia that I'm probably in contact with every day. So people get divided, people get ruined, small businesses get ruined. And then what happens? Well, a very unfortunate thing happens in America where a black man is murdered. It's as simple as that. And everyone was appalled. White people, black people, you know, Asian people, you know, everyone was appalled. And you know, what happened was protests and riots in America, which, you know, I think it's really important to separate yourself a little bit from American culture when it comes to English culture. Always there's similar histories. The American race dilemma or situation is much worse than here in the UK. Here in the UK, 13 black people died in custody over the past 13 years, and all of them were criminals. But people go out on the streets and riot. And what annoys me about a lot of people on the left side of politics, they are the ones telling everyone to stay indoors because of this deadly virus that is no worse than the common flu. And then all of a sudden they're out on the streets rioting, protesting, being violent, and making really a mockery of what happened in the coronavirus. However, I don't really want to talk too much about America. I can't really speak for America too much because I'm English. So I'm going to speak a little bit more about what's going on here because it's quite worrying. So the English people went out on the streets and protested. Again, thousands and thousands of people on the streets made a complete mockery of what just happened with the coronavirus. Police brutality in England isn't a thing. People die under police custody very, very rarely, and it's usually because they've hardened criminals. So to go out and be hypocrites, you know what I mean, when these people have been complaining about how deadly this virus is for the past 3 months, and then all of a sudden they turn around on Facebook and saying that, oh, these riots are okay and protests are okay, is, to me, I would just found that astonishing. And this is one of the problems with the sort of left movement in the world, is they're all about coming together in community and love and light, but in reality they actually turn around and do the opposite of what they actually try and put out there. A great example is violence and vandalism that's going off now in the UK. You know, and apparently these are peaceful protesters. This is what's put on the news, this is what's put on the media, which is infiltrated by extreme left individuals, the media. And then what you're getting now in the UK is apparently extreme right people coming down to try and protect the monuments. And, you know, people are shocked because violence is happening on the streets and people are reacting to that with violence. Like, I don't understand why people are shocked at that. I'm not condoning it, but the far left, who think they're peaceful, often start the violence, and then, you know, these sort of and I don't condone them, but they're sort of like football hooligans or soccer hooligans in America who, you know, think they're sort of big patriots, but they're too violent, in my opinion. Will come down and they'll be violent. Now, what I want to sort of get to is that the initial reason why people started doing this was apparently to bring people together, to bring the races together, to bring the black and white people together. And usually what you see is a lot of big mouth white people who are sort of white saviours, who are the ones who are being super vocal, which is really frustrating. I mean, they're taking away a voice for these black people who, you know, should be speaking. And, you know, as a British white man, I personally don't see racism in my circles. I haven't seen it for many years, but, you know, a lot of people would say that that's because I've got white privilege. In reality, I just know racism when I see it, and I don't see it too much. I'm not saying it's not there, by the way. But the thing is, I've not really seen any black people coming out in my circles and speaking to me, and I've got a lot of black friends. I've got a lot of white people, very, very vocal white people, who basically, if you're not on their narrative, you must be racist. So I decided to do a bit of research, and I got in touch with my black friends, and I asked them what's the situation is. Are you systematically pushed down by white people? Are white people so bad? And they said no, and they're quite ashamed, a lot of people, what's going on. And they think that a lot of black people are taking advantage of the situation with the stealing and looting, etc., etc. And one of my arguments is that, you know, there's 15 plus minorities here in the UK, and we're not seeing an uprising of these people. Now, if white privilege was to blame, and by the way, you know, if there is any black people watching this, I'm not saying that racism is not around. I'm just saying that I don't believe white privilege is to blame, and I'm trying to get to the root of this. And unfortunately for me, I've had to go to black people to ask questions, because they're not vocal. All I'm seeing is vocal white people in my sort of sphere, which, you know, it's the same people who in 1 month, 2 months time will not be speaking about this, and we'll be on to something else. You know, I hang around with a lot of black people in church. In fact, I actually found them much better in many respects. They seem to have a really, really strong community spirit in the church I was in, and they seem to have family units that, you know, the family units that were together were actually really strong, and I appreciated that. So I got in touch with some black people. I said, you know, what's the problem? What's going off? You know, I'm really sorry if you thought that I was privileged when I was hanging around with you and I made you feel bad. And they was like, nah. They said that one of the biggest problems they've got is a lot of black males are grown into single parent families. Now, Dr. Wilson mentioned this too, and you know, 65% of black males and females born today are born into single parent families, so they don't have the father energy. And this is what the rogues are trying to do. I've spoke about it in other videos. The rogues are trying to emasculate men. The rogues are trying to take men away from the family unit and demoralize men, and make people think that there's no such thing as the male energy. And the reason why is the male energy is the stronghold usually of the family. I like to think of it a little bit like a building. If you put the elevator shafts up in the building, is that sort of the male energy, the masculine energy, and the female energy is sort of the floors in the building. So they have this sort of more spacious, sort of wide relationship sort of energy, and that's what's happening. They're bringing down the male energy, but no one speaks about this because the rogues, I don't think, want people to know about this. And if people do enough research and enough reading, they'll realise that people who are born into single parent families are more likely to commit crime. Now, it's not racist to say that the black community commit more crime, way more crime than the Chinese community, for example, or the Asian community. And that's not the white man's fault. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying there's not racism knocking around, but you can't blame that on the white man. It's not fair. And you know, if white privilege was so bad, we would see the Asian community coming out right now and protesting and being violent. We would see the Chinese community coming out. We would see the Czech community, the Polish community, the Somalian community coming out and protesting and being violent. But when you look at the Asian community, 15% of children are born into single parent households. And you know, there's not that much crime in the Chinese community, especially in England, you know. So what I'm trying to say to you is, people really need to wake up and realise that there's not necessarily systematic racism. Racism is deep rooted and it gets better and better every day. Now at the moment we've got thousands of people on the streets fighting against each other. That, in my opinion, is pushed back the race divide 40 years, 50 years. You know, this is making things 10 times worse, and people need to wake up and smell the coffee and realise people are getting played against. This is divide and conquer. This is divide and conquer, and they're trying to make black people go against white people and blame everything, all of their problems on them. Really, we need to go down to the root cause. We need to go down to the root cause of everything. When we're in nutritional balancing, we go down to the root cause, and the root cause is usually a toxin. It's usually some sort of chemical, and you know, but the blame is, oh, you got a skin problem, or you know, whatever. You'll put some cream on it. You'll just like wrap a band-aid around it or whatever. And we need to go to the root problem. White privilege is, you know what I mean, like, if white privilege was a big thing, all of the minorities would be outraged at the moment. And there's 15 minorities here in the UK at the moment, but that's not the case. Why is that the case? Well, I personally believe that we need to go down to the root cause. And I think one of the root causes is that a lot of black males are unfortunately born into single parent families. We need to figure out the reason why. It can't be white privilege, because all the minorities get treated the same, especially in England. And you don't see that in the Asian community, you don't see that in the Polish community, you know, you don't see it in the Muslim community, if that makes sense. So if white privilege was a thing, all of these communities would be out right now protesting, because in the UK, you know, they all get treated the same, and they've all had bad histories, all of them. So please, please, please try not to just stamp the racism card when really things are becoming more divided. That's the problem. And try and find the root cause. 65% of black children are born into single parent households. It's no shock. It's scientifically proven that people who don't have a father end up committing more crime. Why is that? Because the fatherly energy is a driving force, it's a grounding energy, and it's what people need. And that's why I think the world's getting more chaotic these days, is because they don't have the fatherly energy of God, you know, which is really, really important, really important. So I'll leave that with you. Probably going to trigger a few people, usually left white people. If you would like to comment with your opinion, that would be great. And please stay strong. Don't divide people. Don't divide. Bring people together. Find the root cause. Find the root cause. Don't be a victim. You know, there's a lot of minorities. Try not to be a victim. And try not to put all the blame onto white privilege. I'm not saying that there's not a problem, but it's not all that fault. And you know, what's interesting now is sort of the far left, extreme left, are sort of taking over places in Seattle and you know, Minneapolis. You know, the utopian people who know how to create communities and know how to, you know, make the world a better place. And in reality, you know, the cities are just turned into like third world countries. This is the problem. They sort of implode. They implode in on themselves, and you need to see the shadow side of that and remove yourself away from it, because it's damaging. Alright guys, I know that's a heavy video, but I had to say it. One of the problems is I need to get this out, because if it doesn't come out, it's somewhere else. It's on a Facebook post or something like that, and you can't really get your true words across on platforms like that. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Sign up, subscribe, like, and catch you soon. Bye.